The 1979 Winston 500 was the 10th race of the 1979 NASCAR Winston Cup season, and it was also the 10th year that NASCAR had been competing at Talladega. 40 cars started the event, and with the current aero package, it looked to be a pretty exciting race, like the Daytona 500 back in February. The big one wasn't yet common at Talladega, as it is now, but it did happen before in previous races. With the tight pack racing and the aero package, would there be a big one today? Yes, there would, and it would happen early. As the leaders came into the trial hole to begin lap 4, leader Buddy Baker went to the outside. As he went to the outside, Neil Bonnet went to the inside to take the lead, and in doing so, Baker's car started to become loose. As Baker tried to save his loose Oldsmobile, his car overcorrected and went towards the outside wall, and into the path of Cale Yarborough. Yarborough saw this coming and attempted to avoid hitting Baker. Yarborough turned hard to the left to pass Baker, but as he turned left, his left rear clipped the front end of the 27 of Benny Parsons. As Parsons and Yarborough spun towards the infield, 14 more cars were collected, including Donnie Allison, Dale Earnhardt, Darrell Waltrip, Harry Gant, and more. As Parsons and Yarborough continued toward the infield, they ran over part of the access road for the Talladega road course. This caused Cale's car to hop over the access road and become airborne, getting completely onto its driver's side mid-air before coming to rest on all four wheels. Parsons and Yarborough then spun up the turn 1 banking into the path of more oncoming cars before sliding down the banking and coming to a rest on the apron. As Yarborough's car came to a rest, his car stopped next to Dave Marcus's number 71. Cale began to unbuckle himself and then climbed out of his car to inspect the damage. As he was overlooking the damage to his car, D.K. Ulrich, driving his self-owned number 40 Buick, had lost his steering and his brakes in the wreck and was coming down the turn 1 banking and into the path of Yarborough and Marcus. Yarborough didn't see this coming, and Ulrich couldn't stop. Ulrich slammed into Marcus's car, pushing Marcus's car up against Cale Yarborough's car, pinning Cale in the process. After the impact, Marcus and Ulrich saw what had happened and immediately jumped out of their cars and raced to help Cale. Cale's legs were pinned between his car and Marcus's car. In a later interview, Yarborough had said his legs had gone numb and he feared his legs were cut off in the impact. As Ulrich and Marcus pulled Cale out of the position he was in, they laid him on the ground to see if he was okay. And fortunately, Cale was not seriously injured, and he did not lose his legs. As a matter of fact, the only injury Cale would receive in this incident would be a swollen left foot from being pinned between the two cars. Both Parsons and Yarborough would DNF from the race, but Marcus and Ulrich would continue on. Marcus would finish in 14th, 34 laps down, and Ulrich would finish in 21st, 75 laps down. 1 week later, after cheating death at Talladega, Cale would go on to lead 83 laps and win the race at Nashville. Throughout his career, Cale Yarborough had been involved in a few close calls, like his crash at Darlington in 1965, his fight with Donnie and Bobby Allison at Daytona in 1979, and his flip in 1983 during the Daytona 500 qualifying. Some may think this crash was not all too serious, but for me, I think this was his closest call in his career, and it all could have ended differently, and it could have been even worse if it had been for the quick thinking of D.K. Ulrich and Dave Marcus to pull Cale out of the trouble he was in that day in 1979.